You believe in the moon landing, right?
I used to believe in the moon landing.
You don't anymore?
I had a joke in my act about it, that before COVID, I would have told you vaccines the most important invention in human history. And after COVID, I'm like, I don't think we went to the moon.
Yeah, I know that was in your, but
Yeah.
you actually think that?
I think there is a less than zero possibility that we did not go to the moon.
Oh my gosh.
I know. Why do you think we went to the moon?
Because it's exactly what you just said about, well, there's a lot of reasons, but the main thing is what you just said about the Earth. The vastness of the conspiracy that would be required to fake that. It's so vast that it's a lot more incredible to believe that we faked it than to believe that we just went. And going to the moon, it's a massive achievement. But I think the greatest human achievement of all time. But even so, to fake it would be even more massive. Because not only would you need all of these space agencies and all the different whatever people in American institutions to be colluding, but you'd also need foreign governments, including adversarial foreign governments, who at this point certainly would know we faked it, and for some reason haven't blown the lid on it. So they're letting us like take this achievement that they know. Like, why haven't the Russians come out and said
all those things you're saying are true?
Right.
I don't argue with any of the things you're saying, but one of the things that I think you have to consider was, if it's not possible for human beings to safely go through the Van Allen radiation belts and out into deep space without much protection and face the temperatures that are on the surface of the moon, which get up to 250 degrees and 250 degrees below zero in the shadows. There's no environment there. It's hostile beyond belief. Micrometeorites are flying into the moon all the time. They're flying through space all the time. We've never had a single biological organism go out into deep space, past the Van Allen radiation belts, and then come back to Earth and come back alive, except human beings during the Apollo missions. Every single space station mission, every single space shuttle mission, all of them are inside 350 miles from the Earth's surface. The only time human beings have ever been past that and through the Van Allen radiation belts was the Apollo missions. And we were the only humans that were ever able to do that. The Russians never figured out how to do it. No one else figured out how to do it but the Apollo astronauts. And we did it 7 times, 6 successfully, from 1969 to 1972. If you said to me, do you think that they could fake the moon landing today? I would say no. I would say no. People are going to be able to track it. It's very easy. They have satellites. They're going to know everything. But in 1969, the technology was so crude that when they first showed the Apollo 11 landing, they didn't even show a direct feed to the networks. So like if you're on CBS News, you don't get a direct feed. What you do is you point a camera at a projection screen. So that's why the film looks so shitty. The camera is pointed to a projection screen where you see the astronauts jumping around on the moon. And you see this weird, grainy, third-generation image, right? And we did it, and we have never done it since. And we've always said we're going to do it, and no one's ever even come close. No one's ever even gone into deep space since 1972.
We also haven't been trying.
We haven't been trying. But we always talk about going back, including Herbert Walker Bush talked about going back, George W. talked about going back. They all talk about going back, but nobody ever gets anywhere.
Well, I think that's because we lost the spirit and hunger for discovery. We
didn't just lose that. We lost all the technology from the Saturn V rocket. They don't even have that anymore. In fact, they don't even have the original film. They erased all the original footage of the Apollo missions. So you just have copies of everything.
You could develop the technology again. You can do all that.
Sure you could. If you can get through the Van Allen radiation belts into deep space with human beings and have them safely come back.
But I think what you're describing to me, all that does is highlight how incredible the achievement was.
If they did it. Right, if they did it.
But I don't, well, here's the main point. There's no evidence, because saying that it was a hoax is an assertion of it's not you're not just denying an event, you're asserting a whole other event that you say happened instead. And there is evidence that we went to the moon. Now someone who's a skeptic might say it's not enough evidence or it's not good evidence. There's like evidence. There's eyewitness. There's people that went and came back and told us. There's footage. There's a lot. Okay. There is evidence.
Okay.
But there's no evidence of the hoax. Like no one has come and said, "Here's my affirmative evidence that this hoax happened." It's never happened, right, as far as I'm aware. No one's ever provided that evidence.
I see what you're trying to say. The evidence that they went to the moon, there's a bunch, right? There's moon rocks. That's one. There's lunar reflectors that they placed on the moon. That's another. And there's a couple problems with those. First of all, the Soviets put laser reflectors on the moon as well. And also the moon itself, in many places where you shine lasers on it, it bounces back by itself. The reflective quality of the moon, the reason why the moon is so bright and white in the sky when the sun hits it, there's a certain amount of, you get a certain amount of bounce back off of different things with lasers. There's some photographs that are interesting. What was it? Was the India? What was the one where they got the most high resolution photos of the lander?
I'm looking at Wikipedia right now of all third-party evidence of the Apollo mission.
One of the things that's interesting is they gave a moon rock to, was it a prime minister of Holland? Is that what it was? Which one was the moon rock they gave that turned out to be petrified wood? So the Apollo astronauts gave a moon rock to some foreign dignitary, and it turned out to be a piece of petrified wood. They do have samples of moon rocks that came from the moon, but we also have those on Earth. And in fact, Wernher von Braun in 1968, I believe, went to Antarctica. There's all these photographs of him in Antarctica. Antarctica is a great place to take moon rocks because Antarctica is just this gigantic sheet of white, and you can spot the meteorites in the ground. So this is the photo. I mean, this is from what? What is this from? What is the? So this is an Indian Space Research Organization's. I don't know how to say that word. Chandrayaan-2 orbiter captured images of NASA's Apollo 11 and 12 landing sites and lunar modules from 100-kilometer altitude. Apollo 12 image astronaut boots tracks are still even visible. Due to the recent interest in another post I shared, decided to download to view the raw imagery. So that looks like there's some kind of thing on the moon.
It's pretty good evidence.
It is evidence that something's on the moon. It's not evidence that human beings went to the moon. See, we have things that are on the moon. We have things on Mars right now.
Well,
we had things that were, we'd shot things into space for sure.
Yeah, but it's evidence. It's not proof in and of itself, but it is evidence.
Listen, I'm not saying we didn't go to the moon. What I'm saying is the subject is complex. And it's not even a little complex. It's really complex. There's a documentary called The Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Moon. This guy, Bart Sibrel, he's been obsessed. He was a guest on the show, too. Been obsessed about this his whole life and absolutely believes that we never went to the moon. And there's enough shit that you go, okay, if he's right about any of these things, it's weird. One of the things was some of the photographs of the moon, they ran through one of those AI detectors that can tell you whether or not something's false or artificially generated. And it showed different images from, I think it was a Chinese satellite of the moon. They said this is legitimate. But then it got to these Apollo images, and they said these have been doctored. This is AI.
Who said that?
This AI program that
all
they
the
ran.
images or a few of them?
A few of them.
But then other ones were found to be authentic.
I don't think so. I think they only ran a few images through. See if you can find those, Jamie. Find what they did. Again, this is not saying that we didn't go to the moon. It could be, and this was a fact with the Gemini 15 program, where Michael Collins, there was a photograph of Michael Collins that they took in one of his training exercises, where he had those packs that they put on where they can move around while they're doing moon walks, or not moon walks, space walks outside of where they're connected by a tether. And he was like in this harness and manipulating this device. And what they had done is taken a photograph of him training, and then someone, probably some overzealous PR person, had taken that photograph and then blacked out the background and tried to pass it off as a really clear photograph of him out there on a spacewalk, which is probably very difficult to get, right? You'd have to have another person at the camera, frame it right. They had this photo. They're like, look, he did it. Let's just pass this off as the real thing, which is, you're also talking about the Nixon administration where they were just full of shit constantly.
If you remember, this is where he tried to claim it was from, which is a Russian video. I don't know.
So there's different video where they ran it through and they said it was real, and was it a Chinese program? But when they ran the American ones, the American images, they said that they were doctored. Again, it doesn't mean that we didn't go to the moon. But it does mean, okay, there's that. That's weird. Have you ever seen the Apollo 11 post-flight press conference?
Yeah.
It looks like a hostage video. It looks like a bunch of guys who don't want to be there. They look real fucking nervous, and they look real deceptive. And if you watch that video, it's weird.
Well, but I think that's the temperament it requires to do something like that.
Could be.
It's basically, it's almost suicidal to go to the
Right.
moon. And so you have to be like barely even a human psychologically to do it. So that to me is just like, and they just went through this whole experience. Well, who knows what that does to the human psyche? To even just like be in the vastness of space, even on the space station, I feel like that would change me as a person, not necessarily for the best.
Well, there's actually like a psychological condition that they talk about. That this sort of understanding that we're all connected. That it's like akin to a religious experience that many astronauts get when they go up to the space station and look down at the Earth and go, "Oh my God, what are we doing? Like we're all together in this thing, and we're so alone in the universe." And for us to be fighting over these trivial differences and these stupid lines in the dirt that we draw, when we are like just clinging to this ball in the middle of everything.
So then what would you say, or someone who is a full-on believer,
Not a full-on believer,
someone who is a full-on believer in the moon hoax, what would they say to my other point that there is evidence we went to the moon? You can try to nitpick the evidence.
Mm-hmm.
There is zero evidence of a hoax, because that's a whole other event that would have had to have happened. There is no evidence at all, not one sliver of evidence ever, of that hoax having ever happened.
But I think that's a weird way to frame it, right? Is there evidence of a hoax of the JFK assassination that Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone? Do you think there's evidence?
Well, but the event itself, being that JFK was killed, happened.
But that's not the conspiracy. So the conspiracy is, did he act alone? And is there evidence that he didn't act alone? What do you think?
I'm very skeptical that he acted alone. Yeah.
Right. But
I don't know. I don't know exactly what happened. Nobody does.
Exactly. Same exact perspective. Same exact perspective about this moon thing. Like it may have happened, but this was a time of deep deception in the American world. This is a time after Operation Northwoods. This is a time after the Kennedy assassination. This is a time. I mean, this is a weird, fucking shaky time in terms of propaganda. This is after Eisenhower warned about the military-industrial complex. This is like, there was a lot of deception. Gulf of Tonkin incident. There's a lot of open deception that the American people were being subject to. And then there's this Cold War between us and Russia, this space war for superiority. There was we wanted it so bad we brought in Nazis.
But I think, I mean, the JFK is an interesting example, but because yes, there are things that I'm skeptical of that are claimed that I don't really have evidence that the thing didn't happen or that it didn't happen the way they say, but I'm still skeptical. So I get that, but it feels different to me because the JFK assassination did happen. The question is, how did it happen? But if we're going to assert that a major historical event, probably the greatest, the most significant historical event in history, or one of them, did not happen at all, no one did it, then like I said, so what you're actually claiming is that some other thing, they went somewhere and they pulled off this hoax and they planned it and they did, like an event happened where they were faking it.
Right. And
so what I would want to see, has anybody come out, any whistleblower ever, to say, hey, I was involved in the shoot, or I'm in Hollywood, I talked to a guy who was there. Well,
that's not even evidence. You know, real evidence would be some sort of documentation, some sort of a way to go over, like there's a binary code that shows the distance between the Earth and the lunar module at every stage of the journey, but that's missing. That stuff's missing. All the tracking data, they can't find it. All the original footage is missing. And it could just be people who are really bad with historical items. That's possible. But to say that faking the moon landing would be a bigger achievement than actually going to the moon, I would say only if people could actually go to the moon. So here's the question. Can we really, everyone wants to dismiss it, can we really send a biological entity into space, go through that radiation, which is thick, covering the Earth, and have it come back alive?